Ranking Member Westerman. He and I began this whole congressional process early on with their first hearing, and they addressed the cost of doing nothing. And they specifically addressed the cost of doing nothing with the bridges, over 56,000 bridges that aren't functioning in our country. And I must tell you, I'm going to direct my remarks on what I think is Exhibit A of this. And the reason we're here, too, is because if the hearing room we're sitting in right now needed repair, whose responsibility would that be? It would be the federal government, because they own this building. And unlike so many other projects that we'll hear, so many other needs we'll hear in the next year, what's unique about this is the two bridges that connect the peninsula of Cape Cod to the rest of the mainland are owned by the U.S. government. They are U.S. assets. It's our responsibility to fix those the same way it is to fix any repairs here in this room. And that amounts to, the federal bridges are probably 1%, is a good estimate, of all our bridges are federal. Almost all of those are on federal land. This is uniquely the responsibility, the statutory responsibility of the Army Corps to fix it. Now, these were built around the WPA area, 85 years old now, and they're functionally obsolete. In fact, when they started out, there was 40,000 people, full-time population in that peninsula of Cape Cod, and now it's 250,000. There were 80,000 vehicle trips a month on average at that time. There are 3.4 million now. And what have we done to improve that? The U.S. government has done nothing in terms of delaying action to deal with it, and a responsibility they statutorily have themselves. So we're looking at the options, and the day of reckoning has arrived here in terms of this U.S. asset. That we're now at a stage of saying we either have to replace those bridges or go down the road of rehabbing them and repairing them. And what's that going to mean? 3.5 years to repair these bridges it would take. They would have to close off completely, just shut off the bridges for 10 months of that. They would have to close the lanes at least for an additional 28 months. When we just did some repair, the cost we're not talking about is just those lane closures that, in terms of weeks versus months, cost $30 million just when we did the last ones. That's in commerce that's there. So there's really a great need to address this. If we don't replace those bridges, they're going to have to be weight rated, so that the truck containers that are on 46 tons usually, they couldn't go over it. And the ferries that connect the islands couldn't get those containers at that size onto the ferries, and people wouldn't be able to do this. And there's other U.S. assets at stake here. That is the only way that we connect to Joint Base Cape Cod. In the whole east coast of the United States, the PAPOD missile system detection, our radar for the whole East Coast and beyond is in that base, Joint Base Cape Cod. They track the missiles that are there. They look for the defense. They track the space launches. They track the satellite movements that are there. They also have the 102nd Intelligence Unit is there doing 24/7 oversight over all our troop activities and any nuclear worldwide located there. The National Guard that came to the Boston Marathon bombing was there, able to be mobilized in that emergency. They would be cut off. And if we get a natural disaster, which we would in such a fragile area that sticks out and it's all coastal, we would be cut off without an escape route to deal with that. So the Coast Guard is also housed in that same facility that would be cut off, and they do about 200 search and rescue missions every year. So this is important in so many respects for the U.S. government's responsibility. It does make it different. We do have to act. And in fairness to the Army Corps, this would be such a huge part of the budget. We'll have to get creative, all of us, and work together. We've been working with the state government in that regard, and they're stepping up to the plate, helping us with the U.S. asset. I'd like to put it, if I could, to the committee, allow the Army Corps' Cape Cod Canal Highway Bridges born and the Sagamore Bridges official evaluation report. It's a long time in coming. This will say the cost of not acting will cost more than the cost of acting. The cost of doing nothing is greater than the cost of doing something. So I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your testimony. We will enter it to the record. Thank you. Does any member of the committee wish to question? Thank you. That recognizes the next question. Next